Well, I did say not to get too attached to people. Greetings and welcome once again to Roman of the Empire. I am your host, Roman. And today we're going to be looking at The Last of Us Episode 2, Infected. And again, I am not judging this show based on the video game. I haven't played the video game, so I don't have the preconceived ideas of what should be happening to these characters and what these characters are like. I'm basing it solely on what the show is presenting to me as a horror drama. And I'm enjoying it. I like this episode too. I thought it was another very good episode. This one had some very good scare moments, some sad, touching scenes. The beginning, which I'll talk about in a little bit, had some really good tension building and just the sense of dread to come. And the visuals have been very good. There was a scene in this when I did feel the green screen, but overall it's been really, really nice looking. Everything is done with green screen these days. I mean, you can't say that it's not, but in better shots you don't know that the green screen is there. But like I said, I there was a scene I felt it in, and it was, it's all right. It wasn't a deal breaker. The show was good enough that I can get past that. Doctor Who didn't give me a lot of really good effects for a very long time, so I'm okay with that. So again, another solid episode. So if you haven't started the show, I do recommend that you do. This episode takes us back to 2003 and the beginning of the fungal infection spread, and that scene is really, really well done, and I'll talk about it more in depth when I go into the breakdown. But it's good. It's subtitled, but man, you get the impact of that scene on the people who are in it and the implications of it. And then the rest of the episode is a further journey of Joel and Tess trying to get Ellie to the meetup so they can exchange her for a battery. That's the point of it. And it's a well done episode. Bad things happen, because that's kind of the theme here, and the journey. So with that, I'm going to go into episode breakdown, recap, and spoilers. So be ready for that. So this episode does open in Jakarta, Indonesia, 20 years ago. There's an older woman having lunch, and some military officials come in, and they were kind of freaked out. They're like, what's going on? And so she is Professor Ratna. She is a professor of mycology at the University of Indonesia. Peculiar. So they're walking her down a hall. Everything's very cold. The military officers are standing outside, armed. And she's been brought there to look at a specimen on a microscope. And she's like, okay. And she recognizes as something I'm not going to be able to pronounce very well. Ophiocordyceps, I think is how it's pronounced, or at least a version of that. And she recognizes what it is, but then they tell her it was taken from a human. And she's like, cordyceps can't survive in humans. This harkens back to episode 1 in 1968 and what the doctor was talking about there, and the fear that if it ever did, we lose. So then she's brought in, and she's wearing the full body protective gear like you would see if you were in a proper lab, and to not get infected by something. And she's taking a look at the body. She gets to the I believe it's the left ankle, and there's a human bite, but then the skin looks all funky. She cuts it open. There's some weird material going on inside, and she's getting freaked out. Then she opens the mouth, which I wouldn't have done because this scene was so creepy and gross. I kept expecting fingers to come off, and she goes in with some tweezers and pulls out those tenderly things that we saw from the zombie, the fungus zombie in the last episode. Ew, ew. It was a creepy scene, man. It was good. And then we go back to she's doing a debrief with the officer that collected her, and she asks where this woman came from, and she worked in a grain factory, and she says, the perfect substrate, somewhere where this could have occurred. And the woman went violent and then started, she bit 3 of her coworkers. The cops arrived and they had to put her down. And then the 3 people she bit were taken for observation, and they also had to be put down. And questions. No one knows who bit her, and there are also 14 other people missing. Uh-oh. The military officer's like, well, we need a medicine. We need a vaccine. And she's like, you don't understand. There is no medicine. There's no vaccine. And he's like, well, what do we do? And this, again, it's just such a well-played scene. She has a cup of tea and her hand's shaking and she puts it down and she's like, bomb. Bomb the city and everyone in it. That's pretty stark. But that shows you the danger level and she's an academic, but she understands the severity of the danger that is presented by this in a human host. Scary stuff. I loved that scene. I say it was my favorite scene in the episode, but I think it was my favorite scene in the episode. And then we flash forward, of course, to the present. Remember, Tess and Joel and Ellie they've gotten out of Boston. Joel had to beat the guard to death, and they know that Ellie is infected. I am going to say that I don't think I liked Ellie any more in this episode than I did in the last. You did get to see her a bit more, but man, she still comes off as not very likable. And I've had some conversations about this. And I didn't play the game, but in the game, she starts off as a more innocent character, then grows into a more hardened character. I think by starting off with the hardened character, the writers may have shot themselves in the foot. She doesn't have a lot of room for growth. All she can do is get nicer, which is almost the opposite of what you would expect in a situation like this. So, like I said, I don't think the writers did the character any favors by making her hard from the get-go. Anyway, so they're held up in some abandoned building. Ellie is sleeping on this flower bed, and she wakes up, looks around, and then, of course, Joel and Tess have their eyes on her because they're freaked out. She's been bit. And the change apparently does happen pretty rapidly once you're infected. It's supposed to happen really rapidly. So she's an anomaly. Now, Tess is asking Ellie about her relationship with Marlene. She was the leader of the Fireflies. She understood the value of Ellie. And she's saying, well, they had her locked up and they tested her for days, and they were just waiting for something to happen, and it didn't. So there is something special about this girl. But Joel's like, she's going to turn. She's going to turn. We don't know when she's going to turn, and then everything goes badly. And he throws out a line, which I did like. You've got to stop talking to this kid like she's got some kind of life in front of her. Basically, don't give her hope because she's dead already. It's in Joel's situation, you understand where he's coming from. He's never seen something like this. All he has ever seen from this is death and horror. And there's a little kid in front of him who's infected with it, and he doesn't, it's a stressful time. He's been throwing bodies into a burn pit, and now he's That's probably what he sees her as potentially, just some other body he's going to have to get rid of. So his hand is messed up. Remember, he beat the guard to death. That's going to take a toll on your paws. And they're breaking out food to eat, and he's trying to tear a piece of beef jerky, and it looks like it's painful. Ellie has a big chicken sandwich in her bag that Marlene got for her, and she said I guess they had better smugglers than Tess and Joel. Funny, funny. But then Tess pressures her some more, and it's kind of funny because Ellie's like, and Tess points out, she's like, you realize we're bad people, right? He wants to shoot you. And Ellie's like, I was threatened under death not to say anything about this, and I'm literally telling the first people who ask. So Ellie tells her, there's supposed to be a camp out west where the Fireflies have doctors that are working on a cure. And Joel kind of blows up at this. He's like, he's heard this before. You're the one who's going to save us all, blah, blah, blah. Of course, it's never happened before. But Tess is more accepting of it. She's hopeful. She's all his hope. Joel's pretty much lost that. And so she appeals to his pragmatic side. She's like, look, if anything else, we exchange the girl, we get the battery, we continue on. All right? And his pragmatism comes through. Okay, got it. These are, I like the way the characters are written. They're responding in ways which, given their circumstance, is believable. They're not, like I said, people can become too hardened to the point where they're unreceptive at all. Joel is, I think, at the edge of that. But he has Tess. Like I said, Tess is his moral compass, trying to guide him along in this. And she does. But like I said, I like the balance of the characters, except for Ellie, who I don't really like at all. So they now they're going, they're leaving. Ellie asks for a gun. They're like, no. And exiting their little building, you get a view of abandoned, overgrown, destroyed downtown Boston, with, like I said, everything, all the plants are growing over the buildings, which are toppled on one another. And this scene looks great. It does. The way they've got the lighting on the actors and the corresponding view, it's just really, really pretty in a horrible way, that kind of thing. But it's neat, and then Tess explains, they start walking, and then she sees craters, and she's like, "Is this where the bombing happened?" And Tess explains that they bombed all the cities in an attempt to stop the spread, and in some places it worked better than others, but clearly it was a failure, but not a complete failure because there are still people. So they know that they need to get to the Capitol building, the big gold-domed building in Boston. And they have two routes they can take. There's the quick route or the slow route. Slow route is safer. So they opt for that. And they're walking along just an abandoned highway. We find out Ellie got bit in a mall in the quarantine zone where she shouldn't be. She was there by herself. And this gives Tess some sense of the courage of the child. Courage and stupidity are kind of that's a tough road to walk. But she comments on her courage, and that gives Ellie a little, bump. Joel doesn't give a shit. He's just walking cold and basically dismissive. And then she's talking about the story she's heard, about the hordes of creatures in the quarantine areas that are just running wild. And they don't really talk about it a lot. They're like, okay. And then they hear this scream, and they stop. And Ellie's like, what's that? And Joel's like, let's just keep moving, because right now they're out there. They're exposed. They can't just stop. They have nowhere to go. So they're going to go through what was a hotel. And you come into the lobby, and this freaked me out. the lobby is flooded and there's lily pads in there and the water is murky. And it's like, oh no, I am not getting in that. But Joel has done this before, clearly. So he just strolls in and he's standing on the step still. Now he's like, I can't swim. He's like, really? That's a thing? And then he jumps down to show that the water isn't that deep anyway. And then Ellie's messing around, which bugged me. I'm like, I guess she's acting like a kid. Rings the bell, pretends to check into the hotel, ha ha ha. And then she knocks something and a skeleton kind of falls and it freaks her out. And Joel comes over and calms the situation down. And they have a little bit of a moment there. And as they're getting ready to go, Joel looks at his watch because he's clearly reminded of his daughter. Again, I mean, I get it. She's a kid. She's going to be goofy. So they know they've got to go up 10 floors to get to wherever the crossing is. And Ellie makes some comment. It wasn't that bad. And Tess is like, well, try that with Arnie's, which I can appreciate. As an older man, I get that. And again, I will do I saw some chat about the video game about how this shows the characters are different because in the video game they're more indestructible, a little more superhuman. In this, they are giving them more human frailties, which I'm okay with. Again, I didn't see the game, but just as a story, 50-year-old people who are climbing 10 flights of stairs, it's not doesn't always go smoothly, depending, I suppose, on how you've lived your life or your state of fitness. But it's pretty realistic for these people to be in pain. So they get to where they're supposed to cross. And there's been a collapse. Well, crap. So Ellie says, well, on the small side, I can go out. And Tess is like, well, if you die, we have nothing to exchange. Again, pragmatism. So she goes out, and there's a door they need to get through to get out onto this large patio area. And so Joel's left alone with Ellie at this point in a very awkward kind of scene. She's flipping her knife out of boredom. He's like, where'd you do that? She's like, the circus. Again, not likable. And then she asks Joel, she's like, where are you from? He's like, Texas. Where is she from? Detroit. It's in Michigan. And she's like, I know that. I went to school. Okay, again, you're not making your character likable with lines like this. It's not cool. It gives her, she's a brat. She's a ill-behaved youth. Then Joel finally does answer one of her questions, speak about how long the infected can survive. He's like, some live 1 or 2 months. Some have been out there for 20 years. Then she does ask about, is it hard to kill them knowing they were once people? And he says, sometimes. And then she asks about the guard he killed. And then Tess shows up and they go out onto the patio. She's like, but we do have a problem. Where they need to go, the roadway that they are supposed to get to, the basically the straight path to the Capitol, is now covered with infected. They're just all lying there, semi-dormant. And when the sun touches them, they kind of roll. They roll in a wave, which makes Ellie realize that they're all connected in a fashion with the fungus. And then Tess explains that it's even worse than that. Underground, there are these vine systems that if it touches one of them, it can wake up a dozen more, a mile away and let them know exactly where you are. Yikes. And there's a thing called the telegraph vine, which does this. If you've ever seen The Thing from Another World, you've learned about it there. But so their environment is an incredibly dangerous place. So now they can't go the way they intended. So now they have to go the short way, which they already know is dangerous. And that short way is through the Boston Museum. So they are on their way there, and they get to the point where I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. So they get to the museum, and it's covered. The outside is covered with the vines. This is actually the scene that it's when they were close to the museum. It looked fine, but when they're approaching the museum, I felt the green screen going on. So they don't, like I said, they don't really want to go through here, but they know it's the best bad route that they have. And the Joel's checking out the vines outside. They're all dried. He's like, well, maybe that means that they're gone, that they're dead. Okay, well, let's hope for the best. So they go inside the building, and the tension is already there. And you see the old gift shop just all over around. They turn a corner, and there's a fresh body, ripped apart. And Ellie asks, well, the one I saw couldn't have done this. I mean, I don't know exactly what she saw. But Tess and Joel exchange a glance, and you know that there are worse things out there. So then they go up the stairs, which are creaky and dangerous, and every step they take, it's like, ugh, it's making sounds. And that's not good. You never want to be making noise in these kind of situations. And they finally get to the top. They go through a door into what looks to be a perfectly clear room, and the ceiling behind them collapses onto the stairs. Yikes. They take only a few steps into the room, and they start hearing this clicking noise. It's a very disturbing sound. And so they retreat, and they can't make any noise because Joel explains they're blind. They go by sound, and the clicking sound that they make is kind of the echolocation, like bats. That's the same. That's how they find things, and so they are attracted to sound. So the critter is walking around, and it's got the fungus is grown through its head. It looks like almost like a distorted mushroom. It's very disturbing. The creatures in this are well done. I like them a lot. And they're being totally quiet, but then as it gets closer, Ellie makes kind of a frightened breath, and it's on them. Things go bad rapidly here. So they get separated. Tess is off on one side of the room. Joel and Ellie are somewhere else, and they're all scrambling around. There's another one in the room. Joel steps on some glass, and then the creature's on him. He shoots it, but then there's another one, and Tess whacks it with an axe, and then Joel shoots, but damn, there's just so much chaos happening. He's like, is everybody okay? And Tess is like, I have a sprained ankle. So they finally make it out onto the balcony area that they've been trying to get to. And Joel and Ellie sit down so they can take care of Ellie's ankle. And there's a board going across to the building next door. That's the short path that they need to go. Joel's like, hey, as Ellie's getting ready, that's scary. And Ellie's like, no, that inside was scary. This is just wood. That's an all right line from Ellie. It makes her, it's not totally likable, but it's not bad. So Joel's wrapping her ankle, and they're talking. And I'm sorry, I backtrack. Ellie got bit again. And she's like, well, if it had to happen to any of us, I guess it's not so bad. And Joel is kind of freaked out about this. And so the kid crosses the wood, and he's talking to Tess, and he's like, the first bite didn't take, but what about this one? And Tess gets mad at him at this moment. She's like, can't you just take the win? I've got this. Go. All right. So Joel and Ellie are overlooking the city, and it is quite beautiful. I mean, you've got the gold dome off in the distance. But, the beauty is in the destruction, the death. It's tragic. So they get everything wrapped up. Ellie limping, or Tess limping along, not in the best of moods. Let's go. So they're making their way towards the Capitol building, and it's a really nice shot. So they get there, and they're coming up on the building slowly because they don't know what to expect. So they see a Firefly armored vehicle sitting there. This should be their rendezvous. So Joel approaches the vehicle cautiously. He opens the door. There's just blood inside. He goes around. There's a couple bodies on the other side. Opens the back. Nothing. Ruh-roh. Ellie notices a blood trail going into the building. Okay, Scooby-Doo. Got it. So they follow the blood trail in, and there's equipment inside, and then about 5 or 6 bodies. And They're like, what happened? And Joel's like, well, one of them got infected, and then they turned on each other is what happened. They freaked out, and they killed each other. And Joel's like, we need to abandon this mission right now. We need to go home. And at this point, this is where Tess is like, no, that's not my home. I'm gonna stay. Our luck had to run out eventually. And Joel's like, what? And now he's like, she's been bit. She's infected. And then Tess just gets this kind of resigned look on her face, and she shows Joel her infection, and it's I mean, this thing happened just a few minutes ago, and it already looks bad. And then she tells Joel to look at Ellie's arm, and the arm, I mean, yes, there's the mark, but it's not bad. It's clean. It's not spreading. It's not like poor Tess. So now they have this situation, and one of the infected dead in the room starts to wake up. Joel shoots it, but then one of those tendril vines comes up, wraps around a finger, and you see, a vine coming up somewhere else in the city, touching another one of them. Then they all wake up, and now they're coming. They don't have a good out here. Joel is in shock, and Tess is she's mad. She's mad at the situation, that this is what it has come to. And she tells Joel he needs to get Ellie to Bill and Frank. These are two other of their smuggler associates who are out there. I don't remember them being mentioned in episode 1, but apparently they were. That's that radio network that we talked about that has the songs, depending on the era, depends on the condition that they're approaching. So get the kid to them. And they, Ellie, and then Tess starts just knocking over big fuel containers, and there's grenades everywhere. So this is an explosion waiting to happen. And she tells them, she's, her and Joel exchange a look for a moment. They can't touch each other. And it's sad. You feel their emotion here, and there's nothing they can do. And she tells Joel very coldly, save who you can save. He grabs Ellie, who is protesting vigorously, and they leave. They get out of the building, and then just moments later, the horde bursts in to the hall. Most of them are ignoring Tess, who's sitting there trying to light a lighter so she can blow this thing up. Then one of them, not a mushroom head, but it's pretty far evolved in the process, comes up to her. It knows that she's one of them, so to speak. This is a really gross scene. This is the grossest scene in the series. Tendrils come. It's almost. He gives her a kiss of sorts. It's really disgusting. Opens his mouth and approaches her and gets right up to her like a kiss, and the tendrils go into her mouth. It's just so nasty and horrible. I felt bad for Anna Torv to have to play the scene on, although it's all CGI. I get that. And then at this moment, then she gets the lighter going, and then kaboom! It blows up the bottom of the Capitol building. And Joel just keeps walking, and Ellie's standing there in shock. And that's it. That's the end of it. Wow, though. It was a good episode. I didn't expect to lose Tess so early. That was shocking. And her actions in the Capitol, I didn't see that as her trying to, outmaneuver Joel or try to dominate. What she was doing, she was acting as someone with the desperation because they knew they were already dead. She's the only one who can do this, and she knows that. It's a manner of sacrifice, but like I said, she is already dead, so her sacrificing herself at that moment she's the only one who can do it. If Joel does it, the kid's by herself, and Tess is, she's infected. She is going to die. She understands what she is capable of doing at that moment. It was good. The opening with the professor in Indonesia, the journey through the hotel, the loss at the Capitol with the team is gone, the exchange isn't going to happen, and the discovery that Tess is infected, and then ultimately taking care of the situation. I still need Ellie to become more likable. I'm not sure how her relationship. I don't know. I hope the character and Joel need to develop a relationship in which she is not just being a shit to him. It almost has to happen, but writing can go wonky sometimes. So I'm hoping that it improves for that character. Again, introducing her as a hardened character, I think, was a mistake, but that's my take on it. So I liked the episode a lot, though. Thought it was good. I hope they continue on this path. So we'll see next time. So for now, this has been Roman of the Empire signing off. Please like and subscribe if you have not, because the channel does need it. And please be kind.